want to know everything there is to know about you.
I'm going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
What I decided to do is some writing. I think I've had it with acting. These meaningless auditions, cattle calls, and I can't handle another rejection. Let's face it here. I've got to, latch on to something in my life, something with a future. I'm not 16 anymore. It's just crazy.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Don't Know Her podcast. I am Scott.
And I'm Michael.
And we are here, as always, to celebrate someone we feel is a hero within cinema, and at the same time, we feel like they ought to be shouted about and celebrated a lot more than they are. But we are coming into this episode at the beginning of a new little mini-series we're going to do, and it kind of throws that into a new sort of terrain. Michael, why don't you tell us about the terrain we're in?
So we're starting this new year, 2023, by celebrating the appreciated actors who we feel should be utilised more within their careers. So yes, we're going to be talking about a handful of Oscar winners who, for one reason or another, haven't really had the post-Oscar career you would imagine. And we are starting off with somebody who I had in mind when we started. Like, I know this person is a 2-time Oscar winner.
Yeah, we're starting with 2. Fuck it, we ain't just starting with 1 Oscar. Start with 2.
And they are from a very fruitful few years where she was working with, some of the best directors and filmmakers of that time, of any time, really. But it's Dianne Wiest, who... Why people are not flocking to cast her in everything is beyond me, apart from, she started her career and got her first Oscar when she was 38, which in the 80s, a bit like now, is pretty, old to be having your moment in the spotlight, and kind of played mothers most of her time, interesting mothers, like some of the most interesting mothers we have had in cinema. But she certainly was being typecast, and people are not making enough roles for women above the age of 40 today. But that was much worse, as anyone with eyes and ears that were watching films in the 90s or know about film in the 90s would know. So yeah, maybe it's not surprising that she didn't have all of the success that you would hope for somebody who is truly talented. Yeah, so I'm so excited that we finally got around to her and are finding a way to talk about Oscar winners.
Yes, exactly. She's a fantastic place to start. I'm pretty sure we've both always loved her as long as we have been film
gay
watchers. As long as we've been gay. There's no way of escaping Dianne Wiest's clutch. And I mean her bag.
Her clutch. Oh,
her
my
little clutch.
She likes a prop. Anyway.
She does like a prop, and read into that as you wish.
Oh my God.
But no, I'm very excited. It's a great one to start with. And she is someone who, as we will discuss, she did have really fun films after the Oscar win. She's done lots of great things, interesting things, funny, different, serious, whatever it might be. But for someone who won 2 Oscars... it is just strange that it wasn't more. It's strange that we didn't get the leading roles. It's strange that they didn't recognise the absolute powerhouse performances that she did as an Oscar winner in those roles and utilise that, because fucking hell, the potential is so much. So it's baffling. It makes it a perfect subject for us to kick off this Oscar winners little season. So yes, yay for Dianne Wiest, and yay for being able to revisit her wonderful works and chat about her.
And I think just from talking to people about her since we decided we'd do an episode on her, she has such a, as you say, clutch on queer audiences, particularly gay men. Like gay men seem to really have some sort of connection to Dianne Wiest, and it's, you know, some of her work is queer-ish. I mean, the Birdcage is a very obvious example of it being queer, even though she's being a very conservative mother in that. But her sensibilities, or I just heard like comic timing, regardless of what the film is, she will have this sort of tone to her. I mean, we all, you know, gay men love an older woman who is independent, a little bit offbeat, and I guess Dianne Wiest has done that for a lot of her career. Even when she is playing, you know, the conservative woman in Birdcage, she's still giving off that sort of vibe.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, I guess she's this kind of kooky woman, persona, wise, thoughtful, but also, you know, has a hard edge to her. I don't know, but it is interesting that people are so, particularly gay people, are so, I don't know, excited about her. And I will say, there's a really, really, really camp role, you know, Bullets Over Broadway, and most of these gay men that I spoke to, if they weren't into films, would not have even known her from that. Like, we're talking about Edward Scissorhands or something like that, or The 10th Kingdom, the Sky TV show, which you'll have been slightly too young for it, but my sister was perfect age for that when it came out, and she's this campy witch in it. You know, she just summarised it, yeah. So hopefully we do you justice, Dianne, and
I hope so. Oh gosh, no, I hope we do. And yeah, if there's gays out there who haven't seen the best of Dianne, what the heck are you doing? And this is your chance now to go and watch the best.
Yeah, and we won't spoil any films. We will not reveal endings or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of things to enjoy, and it's actually been really hard to pick which films to focus on. And also, we have, if people are regular listeners, it is Dianne's voice in the intro saying, "Someone has to like me best."
Yes, absolutely. Crucial. So she's been there from the absolute get-go in this podcast. First time we're talking about her in an episode, but she has been here since episode 1 in every single episode.
Well, this is why I've put those people. There are people in that intro where I'd love to talk about them, like Celeste Holm and even Amy Adams, even though that is a stretch. For now, in 10 years' time, it may not be.
Gosh, I hope it is. I hope it's still a stretch then.
So, okay, let us go into the career of Dianne. So she was born in Kansas City, Missouri. Ooh. Her mother was a nurse, and her father was a college dean and a former psychiatrist. Oh my God, it's already started. I don't know why certain words I struggle with. Psychiatric social worker. Fabulous. For the U.S. Army. Now, this is important for some listeners and for my co-host. Her mother was Scottish, and now this is something I'm going to mess up. She was her mother was from somewhere called Auchtermuchty.
Auchtermuchty? No way!
Yeah,
what?
That close.
Oh my God! But no, it's just the best Scottish place to say out loud.
Is it? For you, for people that are able to use their tongue.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah, she's from Auchtermuchty. And her father was an American of Croatian and German descent.
Oh my.
Which is all very exciting, I think.
Very fun blend.
She has 2 brothers, Greg and Dan, or Don, depending on my writing. I'm sure they're both absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And when she was a kid, her ambition was to be a ballet dancer. But she switched. In high school, her goal changes to theatre. In interviews, she says there's a few reasons. I guess the reason that is more kind of highbrow is she got forced to do a play or encouraged to do a play, got some responses from the audience that she absolutely loved, and she loved that connectivity. On the other side, she also says that, you know, ballet required a lot of time at a bar, sadly not a bar drinking, just a bar to rest
exactly. Booze house.
And she was getting interested in boys and socializing. So both highbrow and lowbrow reasons there, and all very good reasons, and thank God for boys in general, but also because of this, because Dianne then turned to acting. And like her final play, which she did, was Pygmalion, and she absolutely loved doing that in high school. So she then goes on to study arts and sciences at the University of Maryland and graduates even in 1969. She quickly joins a Shakespeare troupe touring America and Canada. Then she joins the Yale Repertory Theatre, playing Hedda Gabler, of all people at that age. And then is an understudy on the off-Broadway, then Broadway production of Happy Birthday, Wanda June in 1970. So doing very well.
Very exciting.
And she just keeps going from strength to strength in theatre. So she gets a 4-year job as a member of the Arena Stage Company in Washington, D.C. In 1977, she goes to the Public Theatre to take over the lead in Ashes, and then goes on to play Cassandra in Agamemnon. She's part of the original cast of Agnes of God in 1979, playing the titular role of Agnes. And then she's also getting awards. So she gets 3 off-Broadway theatre awards, the Obie Award, the Theatre World Award, and the Clarence Derwent Award for production of Tina Howe's The Art of Dining. And then, to get to some names that we would know, she is playing Desdemona in Othello opposite James Earl Jones and Christopher Plummer, which also co-starred John Lithgow. And she's also being directed by John Madden, who people might know from Shakespeare in Love, and he directed her in a production of a screwball comedy, Beyond Therapy. And it's around this time that she also makes her film debut. So it's 1980, and the film is It's My Turn, co-starring, or really starring, because Dianne is a very small part, but starring Jill Clayburgh and Michael Douglas. And this is closely followed by I'm Dancing as Fast as I Can, Face of Rage, and Independence Day. And just to flag, Independence Day is actually a film that Dianne brings up a lot in her interviews as one she's particularly proud of. It's a really interesting film, and she's really fun in it, but it's focused on a couple, and she's an extended family member of this couple who is suffering at the hands of her husband, and quite... well, it's awful to watch what happens to Dianne, but the story kind of follows her as she finds a way of being empowered, which is very destructive. She basically blows up their house in a really fun way. So not Independence Day.
Not that version.
But it's still got explosions in it.
Perfect.
But it's really Footloose, which will be the first film people will know her from. 1984. Her part is not huge, but, what a film to be part of and to have on your CV. And then she meets Woody Allen. So Woody Allen casts her in The Purple Rose of Cairo in 1985. She plays a prostitute. She's so funny in it. It's a small role, but it is significant in that this man who exits the film, he literally walks out of the projector because Mia Farrow is in the depression and needs a little bit of hope and sees this film again and again. So Jeff Daniels walks out of the screen and is like, let me escape with you. And he, I forget why now. Oh, Mia Farrow has to go back to her husband. So Jeff goes off on his own little adventure and meets Dianne Wiest. And she's like, you looking for a good time? And he doesn't know what that is because he's in some sort of censored film. And it's really fun. And he basically educates the women and they educate him. And it's all very lovely. So yeah, a really great start with her collaboration there. And then we get to Hannah and Her Sisters in 1986, which gets Dianne her first Oscar win. And I guess it's best, or not best, but maybe we'll talk about all of the Woody Allen films in one, focusing on her Oscar wins here. But then she goes on to star in September in 1987. And, of course, Bullets Over Broadway in 1994. Very fruitful collaboration. So let's focus on the two Oscar-winning roles there, starting with Hannah and Her Sisters. So Hannah and Her Sisters follows Mia Farrow as Hannah and her sisters. So Mia Farrow is married to Elliot, played by Michael Caine, who also won an Oscar for this film. He is lusting over Hannah's sister, so his sister-in-law, played by Barbara Hershey, who is married, who is in a long-term relationship with another questionably toxic man. I mean, not questionably, he is toxic. All the men in this film are pretty bad, toxic. Yes. But she's torn between Michael Caine and... Why can't I think of his name? Yes, amazing. Amazing actor in general. He's very good in it. They're all really good in this film. It's just the characters, the male characters are maybe not as likable as the film seems to think. But then you also have Dianne Lane. You do not have Dianne Lane at all. I don't know what's happening. And we have and
she pops up. Oh gosh, she can't help herself at Dianne.
Oh my god. Okay, we have Dianne Wiest, who is Holly. She is somebody who hasn't quite found her place in life, and as the other stories kind of unfold, or the love triangles, let's say, unfold with the Michael Caine and Mia Farrow and Barbara Hershey, she really is finding her place in the world. So, you know, I don't really know what ages they're all supposed to be, but I think in their 30s. Like, they're not in their 20s.
No. Oh, the sisters.
Yeah, the sisters. Just because of the way we hear things of like they've given up certain things of their life to do other things, or they're trying really hard. Dianne is saying a lot of the time, like, I'm too old to be an actor, and that's what you think, and she needs to focus and do all these things, and there's a lot of pressure on her, either for work or for a man, and all these sorts of things. But really, we're following these people, and I think the beauty of the film is that it allows all these characters to kind of play in this, you know, a landscape of a family. And I really think it's special. And the other person we've totally forgotten to, or other character we've got to mention, is Woody Allen's character, who at the start it's very awkward actually how he's brought into the story. Rewatching it here, it's like, oh, we just have this man, and he was married to Mia Farrow, but now he's just complaining about he might die one day, which is a very Woody Allen-esque thing to do. But then he gets part of the story because he has a relationship with Dianne Wiest's character, because she's getting interested in script writing, and he is a celebrated comedian who at one point had a TV show. And of course, as we've said his name a lot, Woody Allen is the writer-director of this film, and I hadn't seen this film since the Me Too movement and a lot of conversations around toxic masculinity in film, really. And Woody Allen as a figure, regardless of everything else around him in terms of his personal life, like, watching his films is watching something from the past. Like, they are showing a world where, I mean, I assume when it's being written, he thinks men and women have, you know, equality in the world, because he's giving a lot of this, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here, but he seems to believe that, say, for instance, Barbara Hershey's character has the agency to be able to make decisions, whereas watching Hannah and Her Sisters and that character and interactions with men, it's like, no, she's just being like thrown against two different men and two different types of toxic men, and I just don't think Woody Allen understands that. And when I think about a lot of his films, I'm like, well, that's the sort of trope that happens a lot, of women being powerful, but kind of manipulated, gaslit, all these sorts of things, pushed into corners. There are obviously different examples, and even in Hannah and Her Sisters, we have different examples. But even we have Mia Farrow, who's playing this wonderful wife and is literally being told by Michael Caine she's too perfect when he's cheating on her with her sister. So I think it would have aged regardless, but because everything we know about Woody Allen, or we hear about Woody Allen, it's pretty difficult to watch without feeling uncomfortable, and I don't see anything charming about Michael Caine's character, who's essentially playing a version of Woody Allen, or Woody Allen's character, who's definitely playing Woody Allen in it. But I still think there's a lot in the film. Like, honestly, I think Dianne Wiest, I think all of them actually, all the women are fascinating. And this is let's say, a positive of Woody Allen, his impact on cinema, but also why his films shouldn't be ignored totally, or not all of them. Because he's given a lot of space for female characters that are much more richly drawn than too many of these films that were happening at the same time. Yeah. They may not be perfect, but Lord, like God, watching Dianne Wiest in this film, you're like, fuck yeah, like this is the dream part of anyone. Like I can't think of any actor I wouldn't want to see, I should say, a female actor play those parts. Those parts, but that part in particular, the way she modulates from, you know, nervousness to this sort of strength because she's defending herself, to, you know, fighting with her friend, to loving her friend, to wanting this man, to not wanting this man, all in the space of a few seconds is wonderful.
Now they'll dump me and she'll invite him up. I blew it. And I really like him a lot. Oh, screw it. I'm not going to get all upset. I've got reading to do tonight. You know, maybe I'll get into bed early. I'll turn on a movie and take an extra second off.
And I think that's something Woody Allen does very well in terms of his writing.
Yes. I think that's all very well put. I would say, in addition to that in doing this podcast, I guess one of the main joys is being able to encourage people who might not have seen certain things to check out, you know, the films we're talking about. Now, I don't think by choice we would choose to move people towards Woody Allen if, when we have as vast a filmography as we are kind of handling here, to be kind of promoting his work, so to speak. However you choose to interact with it and enjoy it is absolutely your own business. But we perhaps wouldn't choose to put you there. However, when we're talking about Dianne Wiest, there is no way that we can't talk about A, the 2 films she won her Oscars for, and B, 2 films where she is unbelievably good. So that's why we kind of have to land here. So we will talk about Woody Allen, and we will talk about Woody Allen films in this case. Hannah and Her Sisters is, for me, one of his best. When I kind of look back at Woody Allen films, I often wonder, what are my favourites? What do I like the most? What stands out? And I think I kind of struggle with that because there are some that really do, and there's a lot that really, really don't. But I think Hannah and Her Sisters is one of the ones that when I came to it the first time, I was like, wow. And I think it's the wow in this case because of the performances. And most specifically, Dianne Wiest. She is wonderful in this film. And kind of like you'd said, he does write characters in many cases that are, you know, fully developed and coloured in. They're not just typecast nonsense, cut out women that can be easily disregarded. This is a really, really interesting role. It's very layered. It gives her a great part for her to sink her teeth into. And that happens because we have a really interesting arc. So she is the one of the sisters who's sort of considered to be the one that maybe can't be trusted because of her past and her relationship with addiction and these things. But that arc is very refreshing because you're sort of led, like her sisters, so Barbara and especially Mia Farrow's character in the film, to kind of wonder about her and think like, are we ever going to have her get to where we wish she was in her life? But she turns it around. And I think it would have been so easy to write her out as the drug addict and be like, she's the dreamer, the actress who thinks she's going to make it and she's not. But it doesn't just do that. It gives her great autonomy and ownership over her work. She writes the script. It's great. Everyone thinks it's really good. And she has this wonderful moment at the end where you're like, yes, you go. And she plays it so well throughout. She kind of plays into a skittishness that she does very well. Dianne Wiest is very, very good at that. Kind of throbbing between different feelings and moods, and in the turn of a moment showing all of these things. It's very, very impressive. And I think Dianne Wiest is unique in how she handles that sort of work. But Hannah and Her Sisters as a whole, beyond that, I think is one of his stronger films because of its navigating of these situations, these toxic men, these tricky relationship, family dynamics that emerge in the film. But ultimately, the heroes of the piece are Hannah and her sisters, including Holly. I mean, maybe unfortunately also kind of Woody Allen's character, but hey, I mean,
I think rewatching it, because I was fully expecting to find it so uncomfortable of, I'll just watch this in a very sort of bystander way. But I think the film has a lot to offer about, like, you know, expectations on life, what our own expectations are, but our family or society, like interactions between Mia Farrow and Dianne Wiest in particular. You know, there's a bit where they're shopping and Dianne Wiest is talking about she's going for an audition and it includes singing. And Mia Farrow's reaction to that is so relatable in terms of families, particularly as you were saying, somebody who is expected to mess up all the time.
No, I didn't know you sang. Why, you think everybody in musicals sings so well? No, just that they sing. Well, you know, I sing a little, I mean, you know. I know. I mean, you know, don't say it that way, you know, because my confidence is not my strong point. No, I didn't mean that. No, I didn't mean that.
And just like, wow, this is really, it's just fascinating. And even the men, like, I think they get let off too easy in the film, but there is something interesting about how they, like the women, how they are navigating through life. But there should be more punishment for those men, because if women behave that way in any film, Woody Allen or otherwise, they'd be punished more harshly than Michael Caine simply just walks back home with Mia Farrow. And all is fine, yeah. But yeah, I love it. And yeah, I just think Dianne Wiest, and as like, you know, as someone who works in sort of like creative industry and meets all sorts of people, she is very similar to so many people that I will have interacted with. You know, flitting between different projects, their passion being one thing one day, another day. She dresses like a hipster. Like when Woody Allen meets her again towards, you know, the middle or end of the film, she's in a vinyl store dressed as a hipster from day. Like I was like, this whole scene could be filmed in East London now, and I love it. And I love how whatever about the film aging in so many ways, that part of it or parts of it feels still really resonant. Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think it's one of his best films. Woody Allen, frustratingly, because of the way he has made films, like he'd write them in the summer and then film them, you know, towards the end of the year, and then they're probably ready for Cannes the following year in May, and then he promotes it. I don't think he dedicates as much time as perhaps some of the films would have benefited from. And I feel like Hannah and Her Sisters, even though I think it's a pretty perfect film for the time it is and for what Woody Allen could do with his sensibilities about the world or perspective, I still think there's parts of it I'm like, if only really thought of it. Like there's a real awkward moments, like, you know, Mia Farrow being in a production of, what even is it, but The Cherry Orchard or something. You're like, like, think about this. There's nothing nuanced about that. But then, you know, there's loads of great stuff with some of the writing here too. So yeah, I mean, I've seen all of those films that Dianne Wiest has been in, and I've enjoyed all of them. Those ones in particular. September might be the one I would put the lowest down, but they're all. She's in pretty solid Woody Allen movies. Bullets Over Broadway, then, like, so we're skipping a good few years. 10 years? I can't do maths.
I think it's 8, going by what you said earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I just can't do maths. But what would you make of Dianne, or that film in comparison to Hannah and Her Sisters?
Okay.
And what is it?
Oh, gosh. I feel like I didn't rewatch it, so I'm not going to be the best.
Oh, well, okay, I'll do... John Cusack is, again, the Woody Allen type character. He is a struggling writer in the sense of he's struggling to make it, but also his plays sound absolutely crap. And he one way or the other, gets to make a play. Actually, I don't know why I'm trying to save that from being a spoiler. He hooks up with gangsters who help fund his play because they're going to put the main gangster's girlfriend, played by Jennifer Tilly, in the play. And we have Dianne Wiest as a Broadway legend, Helen Sinclair.
Don't you remember who I am? Don't you know who you represent? I'm Helen Sinclair!
Definitely. You are definitely Helen Sinclair. I look at you and I say Helen Sinclair.
She is as big of a diva as you can imagine, but she is the headliner in this play. And it's about, trying to get this play on, having this big star, having all these personalities, because we also have Jim Broadbent, and who is that wonderful British comedian, Tracy Ullman, and we also have the bodyguard for Jennifer Tilly, who turns out is a natural playwright and actually is writing the play in secret with John Cusack and really by himself. And it gets all very complicated, like Dianne Wiest and John Cusack have a relationship. It is a slapstick, silly film, like a world away from A Hannah and Her Sisters or Annie Hall in terms of Woody Allen films, and probably one of his better just out-and-out comedies, I would say. I think there are moments that are so funny in this film, largely because the cast seem to be chewing the scenery. Yeah, Jennifer Tilly is terrific, but it is Dianne Wiest playing this part. How she's introduced is... So we have all the setup, the play's happening, they need a star, so they're trying to get her, and we have a shot of a staircase from the side. And we just hear and see a script being thrown down the stairs, and she is fuming. She hates this script. She tells you all the reasons why she doesn't. She's walking around. She is having such a great time. And to watch somebody who is usually so timid might not be the right word, but shy or reserved, only speaks when is spoken to, or has something that is, has to be said, to see this person transform into this loud character who is, forcing her way around the room.
My ex-husband used to say, if you're gonna go down with the best of them.
Which ex-husband?
Oh, I don't know which ex-husband. The one with the mustache.
And then at the end of all of this sort of huge, essentially a monologue, she's like,
Oh, it's still not a very glamorous role, but maybe I could meet with David. Maybe we could go over the script. Maybe there's a few ways we could find to brighten her up. Why am I nervous?
And you see, wow, all of this is a pretense because this woman is struggling in her life, in her career. She wants to find a purpose. So from that on, I just think she is a joy to watch in this film. But what do you make of it?
So I only got to this film a few years ago for the first time. And it's one that during my teenage years of needing to consume any exciting Oscar-winning part I could, I would go into HMV and I would buy lots of DVDs. And Bullets Over Broadway, of course, was one I had to because I'd seen clips. How can I not? Sat on my shelf for a long time. During the lockdown, I dug it out and I watched it. Now, I assumed, and from everything you've just said, it just sounds like a riot. This has got to be the best time. I found it very dull, and I don't know why. Almost I'm second-guessing myself now, being but why did I find it dull? It just didn't work for me outside, really, if we're talking about of Dianne's performance. Dianne Wiest in this film is the definition of what I think people want, on the whole, from the Best Supporting Actress category at the Oscars. This is sort of you want a scene stealer, you want ham, all of these things in terms of kind of at its, most obvious idea of what it could be, what the category can be, and it is that. And she's just wonderful to watch. So any moment she's in is wonderful. She delivers these kind of iconic lines perfectly, hilarious. She embodies the character in a way that nobody else could. It's a version of Dianne Wiest we've never seen before and never seen since.
No.
So it's not like she was chosen because, like, of course, like, this has got her written all over it. I don't think it necessarily did until she did it, and you see how amazing she is. So I would say I don't love the film. I'm actually someone who, like I was saying before, I'm unsure about how I fall in his films and where I sit with him. My controversial take, because I think for his filmography, it's my enjoyment that kind of overrides anything else I would think. Manhattan Murder Mystery is probably my favourite, which is another slapstick heavy piece, but it makes me howl with laughter. This film doesn't, for me. So, not my favourite, but I love her in it. It's a joy.
Yeah, she is fantastic. And yeah, outside of her, I mean, and Jennifer Tilly, I think. And I also, I think some of them, like Tracy Ullman has good parts too, and even Jim Broadbent. But
sure.
But yeah, this is the whole thing with John Cusack and Mary Louise Parker is the dullest thing you'd see. But when you see Dianne, like, oh well, the whole don't speak yes. Because, and it's like, as you're saying, I don't know who else they could have got. So like a very similar Oscar-winning performance to this is Maggie Smith in California Suite, where she's storming around. She is an actor who's just lost her Oscar, or well, she's waiting to see if she'll win an Oscar and then she loses it. But there's something about Dianne Wiest's sort of portrayal of that is more sort of believable. Like, you believe this could be real to a point. Like, it's very silly, but she's aware of it. Like, she's controlling it somehow, or it's like a persona. Whereas I feel like easily that could have felt like, oh, someone's just behaving this way, and it loses some of the humor because it's not so pathetic in a way. Because you are watching a woman who is really pushing herself to be able to have a career in theatre of a certain age, of all the reasons she's telling you. And we also see her be really self-destructive, which is really fun.
We've never really had a chance to talk.
No. Hey, folks, what can I get you?
2 martinis, please. Very dry.
How'd you know what I drank?
Oh, you want 1 too? 3.
You know, and you just know that this woman is just kind of behaving on a different level. I just think it's wonderful, because it so easily could have been, like, imagine nowadays, like, I think the people that are being cast a lot in movies with, like, loud-ish parts, say, like a Meryl Streep or an Emma Thompson, I just wouldn't enjoy them doing that in the same way, because somehow Diane's rooted it in a reality, and it feels not like somebody with makeup and a wig or costume, like, acting a lot. It just feels like this kind of wild woman moving around a space. It's lived in.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I think from the outside, thinking about her in this performance, you're like, but it's so much. Like, how can it not be acting? But that's great. Like, it does feel lived in. I think the Maggie Smith comparison is very good in terms of Oscar-winning performances. I would say for me, because I won't have anyone shitting on Maggie, the difference is that she's a film actress versus a theatre in this case.
Which one's which? I think they...
Maggie's character is the film actress, so therefore her kind of woes and struggles...
I see what you mean, I thought you were talking about them as people, not their characters.
No.
But that part is not written as well as the jokes. That the beauty of Maggie Smith's great performance in that is more her being this, like, unhinged, as you say, movie star who is... It just so happens she's not written as well.
Yes.
But still really good. Yeah.
Yeah, to compare Dianne Wiest's performance in this to others, I guess you would then have to step away and look more at like and go back to kind of classic Hollywood and look at, say,
whatever
perhaps
Baby
a Gloria Swanson, Norma Desmond thing, or that's really good too. It's more that sort of theatricality, but it's its own thing, and it feels like when you're watching it, and this is why what you said is really interesting, that you're looking at a stereotype, but you're not, because we haven't seen something like this, her aside, before or after. So it's fascinating. I think it is a very lived in, it's over the top but lived in, so I think it makes it a very unique screen performance, for sure.
Yeah, and that character, usually those sorts of female characters of stars that are older, who have to, like, struggle more, is like an element of tragedy, or being pathetic. And actually, none of that is. Diane has never been sexier than in Bullets Over Broadway. You totally believe all these people would be flocking to her. And believe her when she arrives. Is it like 3 hours late to rehearsals because her manicurist had a stroke and plunged forward into her? Which, I mean, I quote, and also like from working in theatre, like, oh my, the amount of people I have interviewed, very famous people who walk to a stage like, there's Electra, there's Clytemnestra, and you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I am superstitious to a point. I was brought up a Catholic in Ireland in the 90s, but I don't like that captures it so beautifully of an actor who is so intensely interested in their art, but also vain, and I love it.
Great, all for it.
So, okay, let's move away from the unpleasantness of Woody Allen, even though she got her Oscar glories there. And let's go back then to the rest of her career. So let's go to what followed her Oscar win for Hannah and the Sisters. That was obviously Woody Allen films, but then The Lost Boys in 1987, which I just got to see because my partner loves this movie, and we went to see it in the Prince Charles. What a hoot, what a great film. She's very fun. Actually has more agency than I thought a mother sort of character would have at that time. Anyway, we're not going to focus much on that because we got to go to her second Oscar nomination, Parenthood, which happens in 1989. The Steve Martin-led film about the biggest job a person could have, being a parent. And that's not me taking the piss. That is the tone of the marketing.
Yes, it certainly goes down that line. Parenthood. This is one that I've certainly liked for quite a long time. Ron Howard directed film about parenthood. It is, I guess, quite as simple as that, but then viewed from multi-generational angles within one family. So you've kind of got Steve Martin at the heart of it, with Mary Steenburgen playing his wife. And then you've got his siblings factoring into Dianne Wiest, very importantly, of course, as one of his sisters. Then we've also got Harley Jane Kozak as another sister, and then Tom Hulce as this sort of removed sibling as well. And then we see their parents in the film as well, played by Jason Robards and Eileen Ryan. And then there's so many other people in this film. We've got Martha Plimpton in there. We've got Joaquin Phoenix when he was known on screen as Leaf Phoenix. Keanu Reeves, Rick Moranis. Could go on and on. Lots of interesting players in this. But ultimately, it's about family. It's about parenting specifically, as the title suggests. And we see them interacting as a larger family unit as they're discussing their kind of foibles as parents and their strengths as parents and how they parent and what it looks like and what's happened through their choices as parents. And I guess quite significantly as Tom Hulce's character comes back into the scene as the estranged son, coming back in, and then what it looks like for them comparing their lives to him, but then need they do that because they've got their own things going on. And it is, I guess, quite then a conventional sort of American family comedy drama type film from the era it has come from at the end of the 80s, a Steve Martin film, Ron Howard directed. It's very charming. I think there's probably a lot of it which is maybe aged and is not as interesting as it might have been at the time. I remember it's one I went to because it was a Roger Ebert 4-star film.
Well, that alone tells you what. A Steve Martin starring family comedy given 4 stars by Roger Ebert.
Please do not shit on Ebert. Come on,
what?
No. Come on,
no.
Don't
anyway,
so
we will go back.
Don't be so cruel.
One day we'll do that.
But I think it's a really enjoyable film. Watching it again now, I still get a lot out of it. Even if there's moments where I'm like, I mean, especially with Steve Martin's character in this, I'd say, like, oh, come on, like, get a grip. You're really stumbling over your own masculinity and manhood here, and it's annoying. But hey, maybe it's not untrue in terms of how it's portrayed, so maybe it's actually a fair representation in many ways. There's great performances in this, but I guess the key point here is Dianne Wiest, absolutely in an amazing cast, is the MVP.
Yeah.
She is playing the mother of Joaquin Phoenix's character and Martha Plimpton's character, and sort of struggling with Martha Plimpton in a relationship which she's not so keen on as a concerned mother, and then Joaquin Phoenix's character maybe sort of falling into a depression and her struggling with what to do there. He's seeking out a father figure. She's a single mother, and it's a struggle for her. But she plays it so wonderfully. I think this is... Oh, gosh, this is a hard... I'm not sure, but I think I might go out and say that this is the best she's ever been on screen.
I mean, yeah, so, I mean, I don't share my fondness of the film, but I saw it when I was older. I don't like Steve Martin in the sort of panicked man mode. I much rather his sort of, you know, social anxieties playing internally, such as Only Murders in the Building.
Sure.
Him running around and freaking out and annoying other people and just not thinking of anyone else is not for me. But I think Dianne Wiest's part in it and her character is fascinating as a single mother in a film where that's allowing her to be both, you know, needing support but also being very independent, is probably not that common. Like, I can't think of many other films around that time that would have had such a interesting character and given such a space to that sort of, you know, person in the world. And we all know many single mothers, single parents, and it just feels really, again, lived in and real. I think she's terrific in it. It is one of her best performances. I think she's so good in Hannah and Her Sisters and what she does there. And I don't think Parenthood is as interested in her in beyond being a parent, so then we don't see that many shades of her. But like, I have like one of the best Dianne Wiest moments in any film is her discovering basically homemade porn that her daughter Martha has made with Keanu.
Is that what bothers you? That I did those things, or that I did them with Todd?
Gee whiz, Julie, there's so many things that bother me about this. I don't know how to separate them. Oh! Woo! Here's something for my wallet.
And her approach, and this is about how it's written as well, because what you expect a mother or a parent to do in that part is to be angry and to shame them. Instead, she's taking a very sort of much more quiet approach, much more like peer-to-peer approach, and is still tearing her daughter apart and teaching a lesson of like, what will this mean for you? What is the trajectory of this? I mean, it's not a sex-positive film in many ways, although we also do see that Dianne Wiest is using a vibrator, and that comes up in a fun way, makes Steve Martin cringe, which is the point, I guess, of that joke. But you're like, well, no, the point to me is Dianne Wiest is sexually fulfilled and doesn't need a man. You know, that's important. But yeah, her saying like, oh, that's one for the wallet is a wonderful, wonderful thing. She is so good. Yeah, so I don't disagree that it's like she's so good in it and totally deserving of the Oscar nomination.
It's how she plays it that she can really get you on side immediately without doing too much, and I think that comes from a great performance. But in a film which is otherwise, I guess, fairly conventional, especially with hindsight, she's playing, as we've seen before, so many shades. And we do get to see her be funny. We do get to see her have these really heartfelt moments. And it's just, although you're correct in that you say it's kind of not necessarily interested in her beyond the purpose of her very, I guess, shallow narrative arc in the grand scheme of Parenthood, the film. But she is just wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And again, it's one of these things that I can't really see anyone else being able to deliver what she did in that performance. And that's why it was recognised. And that's why it still stands out, certainly for me. she is just a wonderful mother on screen, even if it became a thing that she had to do more than anything else afterwards. In this, it's really beautiful to watch.
But at least she's playing interesting mothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Directly around the time of Parenthood, she also gets her first Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Dramatic Series for her work in Road to Avonlea, which, when you Google it, has all sorts of people in it, from Sarah Polley to Ryan Gosling. So
Wow.
Stockard Channing also in it.
Oh my God.
She also then appears in Edward Scissorhands, so the 1990 Tim Burton directed film about Edward with the scissors for hands, who was created on top of a mountain by a town, and his inventor dies, and he's just left there until the Avon lady, Peg, played by Dianne, rocks up to this... I was going to say enchanted. It's not enchanted, but it's just a castle that's full of cobwebs, very Tim Burton-esque, and finds him.
What's your name?
Edward?
Edward? I think you should just come home with me.
And it's wonderful. Like, it is a very sort of sweet moment. And then the film continues as Edward interacts with the town, doing hedges, doing people's hair, being celebrated initially, and meeting Dianne Wiest's daughter, played by Winona Ryder, and falling in love. And then, as he, in some ways, is getting too big for his boots, and he's not fulfilling maybe what the town wants or needs, he becomes hated. And Diane's part really becomes about supporting him and supporting her family. And it's really like magical film. Like, it's a film that I would have seen since, I don't know, whatever age I would have been. I would have been very, very young. And so has a very special place in my like consciousness, film or otherwise. And her part, because she's such a, again, an interesting mother sort of character, is really fascinating to me. It's also, you know, there's loads of things you could say about Peg, but she is visually very interesting. Like, she has these glasses, like she's dressed up when she's doing her Avon job. She behaves a certain way in front of her friends. She is so warm and inviting, but also you have a sense that she does have clear sets of rules and understands what the town is about and who the townspeople she should be trusting and who she shouldn't. And she is, in many ways, a typical suburban housewife or person, like just a civilian. So it's just really interesting to see her in this Tim Burton-esque world where most other people are so loud. Like, if you think of, God, I can't think of Kathy, the neighbor who is literally introduced, and she's wearing this dress and it's like a mermaid outfit. Like, she's so, like, as a young boy, I was both terrified but fascinated by this woman. She was very sexy. And she's trying very hard to sleep with Edward. Yeah, it's wonderful. I really love her in it. I think, you know, she knows her part. It's very much a supporting player to everyone else, but she's also the heart and the guide through the story. And she has some really lovely moments, like the end where she talks and reflects on her bringing Edward down and what that meant for her family. I think is absolutely gorgeous and makes everything so bittersweet that follows.
You know, when I brought Edward down here to live with us, I really didn't think things through. And I didn't think about what could happen to him, or to us, or to the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, Edward Scissorhands still exists within the canon of Tim Burton or the canon of cinema at any time as something that still stands out as its own unique little film, which is interested in both being something that fits into a really specific mold, which Tim Burton is both interested in displaying but also interested in breaking. And you see that, I suppose, most of all with Dianne Wiest's character, who is sort of dressed up and played as this sort of standard conservative mother. However, in terms of how she approaches the character of Edward and her inviting him into her home in this kindness that just radiates off her, it kind of leans more into this liberal idea when you are looking at the other women who you've described that live on the street, who, although kind of feel a little freer in their nature, end up being more conservative. So it's this kind of flip between her versus the other women and what it can look like. And I don't know if that's something that's personal to Tim Burton, because it feels very deliberate and very, very interesting and therefore memorable depiction of a mother on screen. And again, Dianne absolutely smashing it. It's a really wonderful thing. It was wonderful to go back to. Again, as a whole, you can sort of tell it's a film made at the back end of the 80s, trying to sort of almost reflect on the 80s and make a time capsule piece around it, and showing the kind of heightened areas of that. He becomes a hairdresser character and is giving these hairstyles, and Edward himself very much modelled on the New Romantics movement of 80s music. You think of kind of Flock of Seagulls or The Cure and all of these things, and you can see that in what Edward is within that film. So for me, it's always going to be a kind of staple of cinema, really key film to watch if you're a film fan. There's a lot of fun in there. It's a good one. It's a good one.
And as we've brought up Woody Allen, we may as well bring up Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp is someone who I really don't want to see in a film ever again. But this might be one of the few things where I'm like, I also, because he's so far removed from the sort of Johnny Depp I now associate with what we have heard about him and how he's behaved.
Gosh.
So, but also then you do read stories, and it was still going on back then. But that is, there is that, just to say. So anyone that wouldn't want to watch an abuser in some way, don't have to watch Edward Scissorhands. But it is a shame because it's such a beautiful film. But I'd put the same sort of concern on Johnny Depp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who, when I was getting into film, would have always said he was my favourite actor because of the kind of versatility and variety of what he brought to screen. But even before I knew of the allegations or anything like this that followed, I mean, I sort of fell out of love with his performing a long time ago and sort of became quite bored with him. So I agree with you in that I'm not really interested. But that's even aside from everything off screen. That's also just what is on screen and what he does on screen now that I have become less interested in. But there are certainly tentpole performances in cinema that he has given, and this is probably up there at this sort of the peak of that.
And I think this is my favourite Tim Burton, easily, probably. So where would you go after working with Tim Burton? You go to Jodie Foster in the film Little Man Tate. So that was her next film. Then she wins her second Oscar for Bullets Over Broadway. And there's a string of films kind of coming around this time. So there's Cops and Robertsons, The Scout, Drunks, The Associate, which is this Whoopi Goldberg, like, fun, trying to be kind of working girl and kind of, I don't know, it's an interesting film. I do recommend it. It's been added to Netflix recently, so I recommend that. And then The Birdcage with Mike Nichols. So quite a string of films in the next 2 years after her second Oscar win. And then of course we have Practical Magic, the Nicole Kidman, Sandra Bullock, Stockard Channing, Dianne Wiest Being Witches film, which put margaritas on the map. I love it. I mean, I'm sure they were on the map before. And The Horse Whisperer. So she got to work with Robert Redford, Kristen Scott Thomas, and Scarlett Johansson, which I'm sure was a joy for everyone. But this is where things start getting quiet. So she goes to TV. She's in The Simpler Life of Noah Dearborn with Sidney Poitier, no less. And she's also in The 10th Kingdom, which is this fantasy sky thing, which I absolutely loved as a kid. So she has I Am Sam in 2001. And then there's this gap. And then she's not in a scene in a film until 2006, which seems mad to me. This also seems mad, and maybe she just really didn't like the Weinsteins because they were behind Bullets Over Broadway and perhaps some of her other films. But the Weinsteins were making so many films where she seems could have slotted in. I mean, I'm going to go on a limb here and say she would have been great in the Judi Dench part in Chocolat, for instance.
Okay.
I mean, any Judi Dench part. Judi Dench could have shared out some of those roles. I mean, she never was playing British most of the time. I'm sure Dianne could have done a lovely French-esque accent in Chocolat. Sure. But she does, at this point, go to stage. So she's in Salome with Al Pacino and Marissa Tomei in 2003. She's in Memory House in 2005, and then she's also in Revivals of the Seagull with Alan Cumming, I should say. All My Sons, opposite John Lithgow, Patrick Wilson, and Katie Holmes. I would have absolutely loved to have seen her in that. And she's also in Law and Order on TV. As well as, how could we forget, the queer drama from Ireland by Colm Tobin, the Black Water Light Ship, in 2004. So she's keeping busy, just not on film, and I would say, not including her stage work, not very exciting work, not what you would associate with a two-time Oscar winner. But there are times where she's being pulled back into film. So we have A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints, Down in Real Life, with Steve Carell and Juliette Binoche, Passengers in 2008, Synecdoche, is that what you said? Synecdoche, New York, the Charlie Kaufman film with a whole range of people, including Philip Seymour Hoffman, Emily Watson, Catherine Keener, Samantha Morton, goes on. And then Rage, Sally Potter's Rage, which again has Riz Ahmed and Judi Dench and all sorts of people. So these are, she's coming in, she is, I think, good in all of these films, the ones that I've seen of them. But there's nothing really utilizing her in a really exciting way. Even Charlie Kaufman, her part is actually really important in the Synecdoche, I'm just going to keep saying it a different way, New York film, where she's kind of takes over what the lead character is doing and becomes Philip Seymour Hoffman, but is her own thing as well. And it's a really fascinating, it's just a really fascinating shift in that film. And again, like many of her roles, I'm not sure who else could do that without trying to steal the whole show. But it is a rabbit hole. So we go 2020.
2010. Sorry,
2020. We're not in 2020. We're in 2010. It's a Nicole Kidman produced film. It's, I think, the first film she's produced. So it's part of her career taking ownership of the role she could do. So Rabbit Hole is a film by, it's written by David Lindsay Abaire, who had done the stage play. And it stars Nicole Kidman and Aaron Eckhart as a married couple who have lost their child in a tragic accident. And Dianne plays Nicole's mother, who also lost a child, albeit when they were 30 and they were addicted to drugs. And it's a really interesting film because it illustrates grief in a really tangible way. It's a sort of film where from the opening moment where Nicole Kidman is working away in the garden and then her neighbor comes over in an attempt to try and be supportive but accidentally steps on what Nicole Kidman was trying to do in the garden and this flower, and you just see this sort of quiet intense sort of breaking of Nicole's soul, and while she's politely saying, "It's okay, thank you, like, get out of my house." And that is this film as a whole. Like, you see these characters who are all flawed, try to deal with the grief that they are living with in different ways. And it doesn't shy away from how hard it is. And I think Dianne actually gets to articulate that quite a lot. There's a really beautiful sequence where she talks about grief and talks about it and how it size shifts and that it becomes manageable, but it never leaves you.
At some point, it becomes bearable. It turns into something that you can crawl out from under and carry around like a brick in your pocket. And you even forget it for a while, but then you reach in for whatever reason, and there it is.
And it's a really beautiful performance in general, but also that moment in particular is essential to the play, but also the film, in making sense of it, and the character, Nicole Kidman's character, she's the lead, her journey from that point on to be like, okay, like we have to, like, I need to, if I want to be with my husband, if I want this life, if I want all these things, I need to shift something, and it's not just going to disappear, so I just need to live. So yeah, I think it's a really, really beautiful film. Also, I should say, it's directed by John Cameron Mitchell, who I absolutely love. Like, so people will probably know him from Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and he's a very visual storyteller. He's a very sort of kinetic storyteller. So to tell a story or direct a story about grief is, I remember reading, me like, what the hell? But he does such a great job, because the person who was involved in the accident with the son, Nicole Kidman's son, is an illustrator, or a budding illustrator. And they find different ways to communicate, essentially going through a rabbit hole, like, or being at the other end of a rabbit hole, trying to get out of it. I think it's absolutely so well directed. And it is a shame when you look back of, like, well, where was the support from this? Like, if we're talking about awards and the purpose of awards, like, surely they are to, like, champion films that may not be seen otherwise. Like, on paper, this seems like an awards film in a very dull sort of way. But actually, I think it's gorgeous. And if that was directed by, some sort of... If it was a French film, it would have been celebrated in a very different way. But for it to come out in America by a director that's not, celebrated for that sort of film, with even Nicole Kidman, like, all these sorts of attributes, like, no one else that famous. Like, if you had a Daniel Day-Lewis or someone, you would have been doing it. Or Cate Blanchett, let's say, or somebody else who is associated with this sort of level of grief or intensity, it would have been received much better. And that frustrates me, because really it could have been up for all the awards, really. Best Actor for Aaron Eckhart, Supporting Actress for Dianne Wiest. Obviously, not obviously, because some people may not know, but Nicole Kidman was nominated for Best Actress, and deservedly so. But Best Director, Screenplay, Picture, like, it could have done it all. Not costume.
Yeah, maybe not costume, but no, it is one that, even though I loved it at the time, I could think, like, oh gosh, but is it that good? Like, is this just another, Oscar baity film about parents dealing with loss of dead child, that kind of stuff? No. It's a very, very interesting exploration of grief from very different angles. You get those who want to grieve and be in that moment and sort of do the conventional approach to grieving and be supported and understand how you're meant to grieve. And then you've got those who fight against it and want to distance themselves from grief, but ultimately, maybe in moments, are then swallowed up by it. And then you've got Dianne Wiest's character as the mother of Nicole Kidman's character, who's been through it herself, like you said, and knows what it is, and her experience, very importantly, of what grief is compared to Nicole Kidman's character. And then even outside of that, other characters, Sandra Oh, Miles Teller, their characters' perspectives on grief of their own as well. I think it's very exciting filmmaking because it is telling something which would maybe feel a bit too much to sit down and watch, and actually does it in a way where it is often funny and refreshing. Weird to say that, I mean, it's not like a funny film, but there's moments where you kind of understand from their dynamics, especially of Nicole Kidman's character, Dianne Wiest's character, and Tammy Blanchard as the other sister, and how they are together. That is very joyful to watch. You can understand, to go back to Dianne, that she would be the mother of these characters, because Tammy Blanchard's character and Nicole Kidman's character are very, very different people. So therefore, when you have Dianne Wiest as the mother, and you can understand that she is the mother of both of these people because of how she performs and how she is and embodies the character, is a wonderful thing. Again, this is Dianne playing a mum, but getting to play a very well-coloured character that has their own shades, their own perspectives, their own life experiences, and she lives in all of those and breathes real life into a character that otherwise might just be throwaway. Wonderful. And then also very strange to see Giancarlo Esposito in it, because I've watched Breaking Bad since watching this, and he should be terrifying as he is in Breaking Bad as Gus, but in this he's a very lovely man.
There's something about, like, if you, like, what I love about her performance in, say, Hannah and Her Sisters, in this, like, she's very, you know, Nicole Kidman and her do not have a nice relationship. Like, they I don't think would choose each other as maybe mother and daughter a lot of the times in the film. Mostly Nicole Kidman's character wouldn't want that. But then you see where the connection is. What I guess I'm trying to say is you see why Nicole Kidman has bettered herself, because there is a very different set of, like, a class between Nicole's character's status and Diane's status. How Dianne lives her life and how Nicole lives her life. Nicole has done very well for herself, either, it seems like, through her work, but also through her marriage. And she is uncomfortable with Dianne Wiest's way of living. The way she talks about her drinking at a birthday party, for instance. But then when they connect, it's so glorious. Like the moment where like Dianne Wiest is thinking nicely about her past, but then she's reminded of a neighbor that she was really rude to. And it's such a glorious, like, connection, because that's what I'm saying. Like, it is a heavy movie, and I really don't think anyone would probably choose to watch it unless they were getting something out of it, either from, you know, exploring grief in that way, or they were interested in the actors, or they were interested in writing, or whatever it might be. But there are these moments, like when Dianne Wiest is talking about this woman, and they just have this really lovely moment, and you think, wow. Yeah, so it is a shame that I don't think many people have seen this movie outside of maybe Oscar completists or Nicole Kidman fans, or maybe Dianne Wiest fans. I don't know if Aaron Eckhart has a fan base. Sandra Oh, Miles Teller, I don't know these people, but perhaps in future. But yeah, I would have nominated easily. Dianne Wiest should be, in my mind, a 5-time Oscar nominee, and this would have been her 4th nomination.
Love it. No, it's great. And yeah, Nicole Kidman, unsurprisingly perhaps, is really, really fantastic in this. So, but they all are.
Well, you say that, but when she's this is the thing I love about Nicole Kidman. She is not always amazing, but she's always trying.
Liar.
She's always working. But I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. I think that's why people particularly I love her, because she is so always pushing herself.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's exactly it. The key to Nicole Kidman is she makes bold choices. She's a pusher. It's always interesting with her, and it's refreshing. But
I hate Nicole. She's pushy.
She's pushy. We should stay away from her.
As Dianne would say. But, you know, people didn't watch it. So Dianne's film career then goes to... really importantly around this time is the interview where she says, "I can't pay my rent." And she talks about having to leave her, you know, trendy loft apartment or whatever it is and move out of New York City because she's not getting the roles.
Yes.
Which is wild. So, you know, that's a 2-time Oscar winner who is, you know, doing, you know, this is when she was promoting Happy Days in 2016. But it's like wild. But the film's like around this time. I guess it's not, it's just like, well, she's not getting paid for these films, and why the hell is she not in, even an extra in Marvel or something? I don't know what the hell she'd want to do, but just pay her rent. But yeah, she's in The Big Year, The Odd Life of Timothy Green, The Humbling, Five Nights in Maine, which is a really well-acted film, but, understandably didn't catch any sort of attention. And she's also in Sisters, and that's all between 2010 and 2015. So not much for, again, a 2-time Oscar winner who is, you would assume, beloved and seems like the nicest woman. You'd perhaps understand if you heard stories or whatever of her like being really difficult or like, no, I won't act unless it's Nicole Kidman or Sandra Bullock or whoever. But she just seems so excited about work, and I don't know, I just don't think the parts were there that interested her. But yeah, so she does do Happy Days, which I would have loved to have seen, the Samuel Beckett play, where people will probably most know that because the actor is covered in sand for most of it, or land, or earth in some way. She would have been amazing, I'm sure. So her last handful of films is a real interesting time because, if you think about men of a certain age, let's think about Albert Finney, for instance. He's just really randomly come into my head because I watched a movie with him very recently. When he turned a certain age, he could play these like gangster heads or like a wise man or, the lawyer in Erin Brockovich, all these sorts of parts. And I don't think the equivalent happens for women unless you're prepared to be, dowdy woman in a corner, or the mother or the grandmother, or all these sorts of parts. I mean, perhaps, there's an argument to say maybe, someone like Judi Dench does eat up a lot of those parts, and Emma Thompson now, or whoever you want to point at. But that isn't the problem is Judi Dench or Emma Thompson. The problem is there should be more parts for all of these women. As much as I do casually badmouth those people for taking on parts. No, but what I mean is, like, there should just be more. But anyway, she gets to play the ex-wife of Clint Eastwood in The Mule in 2018. She gets a delicious part of a crazy lady, or not crazy, that's a really misleading thing of saying, but she gets to play this really wonderful part in 2020 alongside Rosamund Pike in I Care a Lot, where Rosamund Pike is taking advantage of older people by basically, when they don't have any kind of support or other guardians, she claims that they're really unhealthy and unwell and need to go into a home, drugs them up, takes over their property and sells it and makes money. But she's picked the wrong person, because, won't believe it, Dianne Wiest is connected to gangsters, and it is delicious.
Tell me who you are. Ooh. Jennifer, tell me.
I'm the worst mistake you'll ever make.
Tell me.
Cell phone.
Tell me.
You don't give me my cell phone. You don't let me get out of this place. I got nothing to say.
That's where I think her 5th nomination should have come. And then we have I Let Them All Talk. I know, Let Them All Talk. It's a totally wrong title. Let Them All Talk, alongside Candice Bergen and Meryl Streep. And then very recently did My Father's Dragon, a cartoon saloon film, where she voices a rhinoceros. So I guess this is the type of career you would hope for somebody, in a way, like roles like Let Them All Talk. And
yeah, I can.
If Clint Eastwood is making films, why not put Dianne Wiest in it? And as much as I didn't like that film, I think she's very good in it. And so I am a little bit hopeful that people will start putting her in more. I mean, I say this: Let Them All Talk and I Care a Lot were both 2020, and we've not heard anything about Dianne Wiest being cast in things since. So I think my optimism is very flawed.
Yeah, frustrating, because I think actually in I Care a Lot and Let Them All Talk, she is actually doing some of the best work, I think, of her screen career. I genuinely think she's amazing in them both and getting to do, especially in I Care a Lot, something she hasn't been able to do before, where she's a lot more dangerous than we've gone to see her.
And it's also contemporary. Like, this is the thing about it. Like, in I Care a Lot is a very contemporary, exciting film. Again, like Rabbit Hole, I wish it did better than it did in terms of with audiences. But like she's literally drugged up, threatening Rosamund Pike, calling her a cunt. It is wonderful. It's wonderful to watch her in that world. So why people like? There's so many. There's not one filmmaker I wouldn't want it to work with. Do you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like you said. Maybe the past few years have suggested it's not as hopeful, but maybe we'll put that on COVID or things like this, and maybe she's just been biding her time for whatever reason. We did talk about Let Them All Talk when we spoke about Candice Bergen, if you want to hear more about that film, but I would celebrate it a lot because I really, really love it. I think it's a very special film. So yeah, let's be hopeful. I think more good things will come.
So, do you think she was deserving of her 2 Oscars?
Do I think Dianne Wiest is deserving of 2 Oscars? Yes, I do. These performances are amazing. I think they stand up as 2 very different performances to be recognised for, even though they're the same director who has his own specific sensibilities on film. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I think she had stiff competition in both years. For example, I'd call out Maggie Smith for A Room with a View in 1986, who I think's amazing. But hey, Dianne, it's a great performance, perhaps a more interesting, probably, performance. So that's cool with me. 94, I would only say, I mean, Jennifer Tilly's also wonderful in Bullets Over Broadway, but Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction is the big sort of, I would probably go that way, but I still think it's a joy to watch her in Bullets Over Broadway. And of the few performers who have got more than 1 Oscar, I'm glad Dianne does. So
yeah, it seems like a real treat for her to have 2 Oscars, but not a treat because it didn't convert to her being able to pay her rent.
Very true.
A Woody Allen film would probably pay absolutely nothing. So now we're going to do the first quiz of the year, and you're testing me.
Oh my God, and what a quiz it will be. I'm actually very, very proud of this. So please humour me. This is a quiz called Northeast Southwest.
Oh my God. I love it.
And the title actually gives a lot away. So I'm going to give you the plot synopsis per IMDb, I should say, for some films. And I want you to tell me basically the name of the film. And it will either be a film with the word North, East or South in it, or it's a Dianne Wiest film.
Brilliant.
So it's as simple as that. Let's go into the first one. A New York City advertising executive goes on the run after being mistaken for a government agent by a group of foreign spies and falls for a woman whose loyalties he begins to doubt. That's from 1959.
Oh yeah, North by Northwest, the Hitchcock, yeah.
North by Northwest, that's a North. Well done. Next up. In early 1970s England, a Pakistani father finds the authority he has previously maintained challenged by his increasingly anglicised children. And that's from 1999.
That is East is East.
Well done. You're doing so well. That is East is East. A widower finds out the woman he fell in love with is his brother's girlfriend, from 2007.
Say that again, his wife?
A widower finds out the woman he fell in love with is his brother's girlfriend.
A widower he fell in love... Sorry. So there's a male character who's fallen in love with a woman.
Yes.
And it's his wife's lover.
Nope. He's a widower.
Yeah.
And he finds out that the woman he has fallen in love with is his brother's girlfriend. So put the widower thing aside. He is a widower.
So he's cheating.
But a woman appears in his life. He falls in love with her until he discovers.
Now, this sounds like a Woody Allen film, but It's not the one she's in. So sorry. So it's I don't know what it is, but it's a Dianne Wiest film. Is it like this? Sounds. I think I'll have seen the film.
So it is. Yeah, I'll give you that much. So
but
far,
I just
it is
can't
a Dianne Wiest.
think. Is she the girlfriend?
No, she's not. This was from. I mean, not that it matters. This film's from 2007. She plays a mother in this film to the wizard.
Sorry. Of course, it's Dan in real life.
It's Dan in
I'm being
real
so stupid.
life.
Yeah.
Not at all. But I enjoyed the muddle you got yourself in.
I just also couldn't get my head around. I was imagining for some reason, like, is Pedro Almodovar doing a film that has this? Because that it's just sort of like, I love it. I love the idea of somebody falling in love and being like, oh my God, you were with my wife. Like, you were my wife's secret lover. Do you know?
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, there we go. So let's get that written too. And another one for Dianne.
Yeah.
All right. When Stan Marsh and his friends go and see an R-rated movie, they start cursing, and their parents think that Canada is to blame. From 1999.
So it's not a Dianne film because she didn't make films around that time.
Correct.
I think I'm really bad at this game, and I thought I would be good. If they go to see a film and they start cursing and Canada's to blame because they live in Canada.
They don't know.
Why is Canada to blame?
Ah.
Is it South Park or something?
Yes.
That's so weird.
Yes.
Why did that come into my head? Because they have a song called Blame Canada.
Exactly.
That's how I know.
You got it. So Blame Canada,
Sorry,
the Oscar-nominated song from this film. South Park, Bigger, Longer and Uncut, which I think is an absolutely wonderful film with
Is that a play on words?
songs.
Joking.
No.
I assume it is, right? About a dick. No. Bigger, longer and uncut.
No, I don't see any joke in there.
Okay, sorry.
I would say certainly.
That's a Dianne Wiest film.
Yeah, Bigger, Longer and Uncut, one of my favourites in her filmography. All right. This one's quite something.
Oh, God.
During a 3-day heat wave just before a huge 4th of July celebration, an action star stricken with amnesia meets up with a porn star who is developing her own reality TV project and a policeman who holds the key to a vast conspiracy.
I don't know what that is. Is it like the things that are coming into my head have nothing to do with the direction? Is it a Dianne Wiest film?
It's not a Dianne
Wiest. Yeah, we
Wiest
wouldn't
film.
say so. So no, I don't know any north, west, south. I don't know what it is.
So that is Richard Kelly's Southland Tales.
Of course, and we watched that. Oh my god, I forget. I think my memory of that film is more to do with the Iraq War.
Wow. I mean, what a thing it is. It's truly quite something. All right. Finally. After moving to a new town, two brothers discover that the area is a haven for vampires. 1987.
The Lost Boys.
Of course it is.
A Wiest joint.
It is surely a Wiest. To wrap that up, you think you didn't do well, but I think you did well enough there. You got most of those. So, you know what? Name your prize.
This hopefully will be an aged prize, but actually let them have a second Oscar too. Let the next Best Supporting Actress winner at the Oscars be Angela Bassett. And if you're listening to this in 2055, let her win a second if she hasn't won, or if she has, assuming she might win this before then. So let her have all the Oscars.
There we go, yeah. She's going to rack them up. But yes, as we record, I think we're on the cusp of Angela Bassett's journey to a very deserved Oscar.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well done. Northeast, southwest, out.
Well, congratulations on enjoying your prize so much. Or your quiz so much.
But also I enjoy your prize, so great.
And what are you thinking now in terms of like what do you want her to do, Dianne Wiest, or work with, or what would you love to see her do?
So we didn't talk too much about it, but thinking about what she's doing in I Care a Lot, where she is dangerous, a little bit unhinged, we get to see this more wiry, chaotic version as the film progresses. I won't say too much more about it because we haven't said too much about it. So maybe go and discover that film for yourself and see what you think. But I want another sort of messier, unhinged, fabulous character from Dianne. And I'm thinking, let's not just do that. Let's go rogue with it. So I'm thinking we put Dianne Wiest getting to spiral out of control in a film probably against some kind of clock or serious time constraint in a Safdie Brothers film. So let's have Dianne Wiest playing full-on manic danger zone mode in a Safdie's film. That would be wonderful. The only other thing I'm thinking of, and maybe this is just something that I'm hopeful would happen, because the last thing we saw her do was a Steven Soderbergh film. I mean, it could be a similar thing to what I'm describing from the Safdies, but, you know, I'm confident that Soderbergh recognised what happened there and will work with her again. So he could also give her something like that where she just gets to spiral. Maybe a contemporary Cassavetes take fresh, but Dianne, let's see her as a whirlwind.
Yeah, and I mean, now in my head I have her like, you know, her, you know, let's say sister or somebody needs her somewhere and she needs to get there quickly because they're under pressure, but the way she gets there requires her to do very dangerous and things where she moves out of her comfort zone. I would love to watch her in that. I've gone really traditional, I think, in a way. So I really love the writer Edith Wharton, who I guess the most famous film adaptation of her work would be House of Mirth and Age of Innocence. Oh. So very beautiful portraits of people in, I guess I don't know what era that is, but, you know, in the past in America where people are, you know, kind of have this British sort of upper class. But anyway, Edith Wharton, one of her books that's not been turned to a film as far as I know is The Reef. And it has a few stories going on, but the story which I'm interested in, and I would want this to be like adapted, focusing on this character, is this older woman who has a lot of wealth, has a son, and is also starting a relationship with this man who has had history with the tutor in the house, and that is not appropriate for that time period. And that tutor is also falling in love with the son. So there's a lot of like dynamics going on. There's a lot of, with that character, the mother who's in charge of the house, a lot of, you know, what do I want versus what is society wanting? What's good for my son? What should I do for this man? Like, what should I do for all these people? Thinks the best of them, but also what Dianne does really well, has a really good sense of like, no, like that is not right. Like, I don't agree with that, or that will get us into trouble. So I think it's like would be a perfect part for her. And I love, like, one of my favorite things about Dianne in so many of her films and roles is how she uses her face a lot, and her lips in particular, to convey emotions. And that sort of world where things cannot be said would be a perfect sort of utilization of her. And the person I would love to see her do, or love to see direct this, see her work with Dianne is Jane Campion. So I think that would be an amazing combination of people, and I think that would be a really striking film, and actually really great parts for everybody in that film. But I wanted to kind of shift towards the Dianne Wiest character.
Love it. Gosh, I wish I read as much as you to come up with these terrific suggestions based on books I've read. Or read it all, and maybe that would help. No, yes, I wish I read it all. Because then I would have, it's great, it's a really good place to come from, to have been like, wow, I can visualise this from the page.
And it's also out of copyright. Wharton, just waiting. I also feel like Age of Innocence is a film that's really coming into its own in terms of people reassessing it among Martin Scorsese's filmography. Yeah. I'm obsessed with that. I've been obsessed with that for years. So to hear it being, you know, touted as one of his best is brilliant. So yeah, I love Edith Wharton, and I love... and also, if you want to just read The Reef, do that. But please, Jane Campion, read it, put it in your in your basket of things you're going to do,
Yeah.
and make sure Dianne is in it, because I think she'd be absolutely perfect. And ignore all the calls from Emma Thompson, Meryl Streep. Ignore them.
Don't listen, James.
Who am I joking? Frances McDormand has her dirty mitts all over. She's like the reef
in her basket.
But yeah, what a joy. I'm a little bit sad because I've been, so excited to do a Dianne Wiest episode since we started, and now we've done it, and it feels like, what's the point?
Our job is done here. The podcast is now over.
But we do have another Oscar winner who I am thrilled to talk about it. What a thrill. A lot of gays may get that reference. I'm very excited to talk about this person. And yes, I wish everybody a very good day, and thank you again, Scott, particularly for that wonderful quiz.
Oh, you are so welcome. It was my pleasure as ever. Do we want to tell the folks where they can find us if they haven't already?
Yeah, I forgot we do that.
All right, we can still do that. So I can guide you there. If you happened upon this podcast but did not happen upon us through social media, then you can also find us there. You can get us on Instagram or Twitter at don'tknowher_pod. Or if you fancy dropping us an email, you can do that too. Tell us who we should do next. What Oscar winners ought we to cover? Who has won an award but their career deserves a lot more after the fact? Or anything beyond that you'd like to suggest. You can do that at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com.
Yes, and please rate, review, share. Anything everyone else asks you to do on a podcast, do it. We'd really appreciate that. And yes, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, see you later.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye-bye.